Have you ever been judged unfairly just because of how you look or where you are? This is the story of Jimmy Washington, a 13-year-old boy walking to his grandmother's house in Oakwood, his favorite place filled with the smell of cookies and love. But his day took a dark turn when two police officers began following him, their stern expressions making him uneasy. They stopped Jimmy, questioned why he was in the neighborhood, and even searched his pockets without permission, assuming he was up to no good. Scared and confused, Jimmy called his father, Chief Andre Washington, the new head of the precinct these officers worked for. Chief Washington rushed to the scene, confronting the officers and demanding answers. His calm but firm words made it clear. They had judged his son unfairly. This powerful moment wasn't just about protecting Jimmy. It was a stand for justice, respect, and challenging harmful assumptions. Jimmy Washington was an ordinary, cheerful 13-year-old boy with a warm smile and a love for simple joys. On this particular day, he was heading to his grandmother's house in Oakwood, a neighborhood that always felt like home. To Jimmy, his grandmother's house was a haven. The smell of freshly baked cookies and her warm hugs made it his favorite place in the world. As he walked down the familiar streets, the sunlight filtered through the trees, and the sound of kids playing in the distance added to the neighborhood's charm. But something felt different this time. Jimmy noticed two police officers walking behind him, their footsteps deliberate and unhurried. At first, he didn't think much of it. Oakwood was a safe place, and the police were supposed to protect people, right? Yet, as the officers got closer, their stern expressions caught his eye. They weren't smiling, and their gaze didn't waver. A sense of unease began to creep in. Jimmy glanced back once, then again, trying to shake off the growing feeling that they were tracking him. His heart started to race. Why were they following him? He hadn't done anything wrong. The officers didn't say a word as they approached, their presence becoming heavier with each step. Jimmy's cheerful walk to his grandmother's house was now filled with tension, and he couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that something wasn't right. As Jimmy walked, the two officers finally closed the gap, stepping in front of him. One of them, Officer Grant, gruffly said, "Stop right there, kid." Jimmy froze, unsure of what he had done to warrant such attention. The questions started pouring in, each one harsher than the last. "What are you doing here? Where are you going? Do you even live around here?" Their tone was sharp, accusatory, and carried an edge that made Jimmy's stomach twist. Jimmy tried to explain, his voice steady despite his fear. "I'm just walking to my grandmother's house. It's right down the road," he said. But the officers didn't seem interested in his answer. Their eyes scanned him, not with concern, but suspicion, as though he didn't belong. Without asking, Officer Grant reached into Jimmy's pockets, rummaging through them. Jimmy stood there, stunned, as the officer pulled out a small box containing a scarf he had bought for his grandmother. It was harmless, yet they treated it as if it were something incriminating. Confused and scared, Jimmy's mind raced. He remembered what his father, Chief Andre Washington, had always told him: "If you ever feel unsafe, call me right away." With trembling hands, Jimmy pulled out his phone and dialed his dad's number. Hearing his father's calm but concerned voice on the other end gave him a glimmer of hope. "Dad," Jimmy said quietly, "the police stopped me, and they're searching me for no reason." His father's response was immediate. "Stay calm, Jimmy. I'm on my way." Jimmy stayed put, doing his best to remain composed despite the officers' continued questioning. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong, but the way they treated him made him feel small, powerless. Still, he held on to the one thing keeping him grounded. His father was coming, and he knew his dad wouldn't let this injustice slide. When Chief Andre Washington saw his phone buzzing with Jimmy's name, he immediately felt a pang of concern. Jimmy rarely called him, especially when visiting his grandmother. Answering quickly, the chief's heart tightened as he heard his son's quiet but worried voice. "Dad, the police stopped me. They're questioning me, and it doesn't feel right," Jimmy said. Chief Washington's tone shifted instantly, firm and reassuring. "Stay calm, son. I'm coming right now." Hanging up, he grabbed his car keys and rushed out the door, his mind racing with questions. Driving toward Oakwood, Chief Washington's concern turned to anger. The idea of his son being treated unfairly by the very people he worked with was unacceptable. Arriving at the scene, he spotted Jimmy standing with two officers, looking shaken but composed. Stepping out of his car, his presence commanded immediate attention. Both officers turned, their expressions shifting from stern authority to startled recognition. Chief Washington, sir," Officer Grant stammered, realizing who was approaching. Without raising his voice, the chief asked firmly, "Would one of you care to explain why you're harassing my son?" The officers exchanged nervous glances, clearly caught off guard. We thought he was suspicious, sir," Grant muttered, avoiding the chief's gaze. "He didn't look like he belonged here." Chief Washington's eyes narrowed, his voice calm but sharp. "Suspicious? This is my son. He was walking to his grandmother's house in his own neighborhood. Did you even ask him who he was before assuming the worst?" The weight of his words hung in the air, and Officer Baker, the younger of the two, looked down, visibly uncomfortable. The chief continued, his tone unwavering. "You judged him without reason, without evidence, and worse, without respect. This community deserves better from its police officers. From now on, I expect every person in this neighborhood to be treated with dignity, just as you'd want your family to be treated." The officers nodded, their regret apparent. But the chief didn't let up. "Today you crossed a line. Learn from this, because I won't tolerate this kind of behavior again." Placing a hand on Jimmy's shoulder, he added softly, "Let's go, son." As they walked away, Jimmy felt a deep sense of pride. His father had not only stood up for him, but also delivered a powerful lesson about respect and justice, one that the officers and the community would not soon forget. As Jimmy walked away with his father, a wave of relief washed over him. The fear and tension he had felt moments ago were now replaced by a sense of pride. His dad hadn't just come to his rescue. He had stood up for justice, making it clear that no one, not even police officers, had the right to treat someone unfairly. Jimmy looked up at his father with admiration, grateful for his strength and unwavering sense of what was right. Sitting in the car, Jimmy felt hopeful for the first time. The officers had been wrong, and his father had held them accountable. It gave him a sense of hope, not just for himself, but for others in the community who might have faced similar experiences. Maybe now, those officers would think twice before judging someone based on how they looked or where they were walking. As they drove, Chief Washington spoke, his tone calm but resolute. "Jimmy, what happened today wasn't right, and I'm sorry you had to go through it. But moments like these are a reminder of why we have to keep pushing for change. Fairness and respect shouldn't be privileges. They should be rights, for everyone." Jimmy nodded, his father's words sinking in. He understood that while today had been a step toward justice, there was still much work to be done. Chief Washington's actions had made a difference, but they were only the beginning. The road to true fairness was long, but Jimmy felt comforted knowing his dad was leading the way. As they turned onto his grandmother's street, the familiar smell of cookies and the promise of warm hugs made Jimmy smile. He knew the world wasn't perfect, but with people like his father fighting for what was right, there was hope for a better future. And so, the story of Jimmy Washington comes to a powerful conclusion. A cheerful 13-year-old boy, unfairly judged by two officers, stood strong with the support of his father, Chief Andre Washington. From the tense confrontation to the chief's firm but thoughtful lesson, the officers learned a valuable truth. Assumptions can lead to injustice, and everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. This story reminds us of the importance of fairness and the harm caused by quick judgments. Let's all take a moment to reflect. How can we contribute to a world where everyone is seen for who they truly are, not based on assumptions? If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more impactful stories like this. Together, we can make a world where everyone is treated with the respect they deserve. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.